Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're unraveling a really complex web of family tension, hidden motives, and a completely devastating incident. We're looking at a true crime narrative that honestly feels like it was pulled straight from a thriller novel, but it's tragically grounded in reality. It's one of those cases that really forces us to examine the darkest corners of human nature and, well, the incredibly fragile bonds of family. So stick with me because together we're going to map out exactly how a seemingly normal household descended into absolute chaos.
Right off the bat, we have to ask ourselves, what happens when an elderly patriarch seeks love but finds tragedy instead? We usually think of the home as a safe haven, right? A place insulated from the dangers of the outside world. But what this case study shows us, and this is the truly scary part, is that sometimes the most volatile threats are sitting right across from us at the dinner table. Because when matters of the heart collide with matters of inheritance, the results can be absolutely catastrophic.
All right, let's jump right into the thick of it with part one, the incident, a destroyed warehouse. We're dropping right into the chilling aftermath of a devastating overnight event.
Just imagine the shock of waking up to find your family business in absolute ruins, and your father vanished without a single trace. That is exactly what happened to Pratap's son Rajesh, who was left totally heartbroken and frantically searching for answers. When the police arrive at the scene, there's literally nothing left but smoldering ash and structural debris where a fully functional warehouse stood just hours before. And the most pressing question here isn't just how the fire started. The real question is, where is Pratap? Rajesh is suddenly left navigating this immense grief of a destroyed legacy, mixed with the agonizing uncertainty of his father's fate.
Now, when we look at the timeline of events, it becomes crystal clear that this wasn't just some random accident out of nowhere. Let's break it down. Step 1, Pratap makes this massive, life-altering announcement about changing his will. Step 2, following a really severe domestic dispute, he leaves the house and chooses to sleep in his warehouse. Step 3, that very same warehouse goes up in flames overnight. And Step 4, Pratap is just gone. You don't have to be a detective to see that the proximity of that huge financial announcement to the physical destruction is a massive, massive red flag.
So, to understand why that warehouse burned down, we have to rewind a bit. Let's move to part 2, the catalyst, love and legacy, to look at the controversial spark that ignited this whole family powder keg.
The catalyst for all of this was an unlikely romance between the elderly Pratap and a young woman named Damini. This wasn't just some casual friendship, okay? It was a profound connection that fundamentally disrupted the entire family dynamic. Naturally, when Pratap's wife began questioning this relationship, the household basically turned into a battleground. But the true point of no return, the absolute tipping point, was when Pratap decided to rewrite his will. Ignoring his wife's desperate pleas, he walked out the door to sleep at the warehouse.
Look at how these two opposing sides perfectly frame the conflict here. It's like an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object. On side A, you have Pratap. He feels he has the ultimate, absolute right to distribute his life's work however he sees fit, completely influenced by his new bond with Damini. On side B, you've got his wife, who is operating from a primal instinct to secure her children's survival and their inheritance. This isn't just a squabble over some cash. To both of them, this represents respect, validation, and their entire future security. It is a zero-sum game, and neither side is willing to back down an inch.
With those intense stakes established, we move to part 3, the investigation, a web of suspects, which reveals that the family home definitely wasn't the only place hiding deep resentments.
Investigators started digging and put together this suspect matrix, impartially mapping out 3 totally different individuals who each had a tangible, real reason to want Pratap out of the picture. First up, obviously, we have the wife, whose motive we just explored, stopping that catastrophic change to the will. But look at the second row here, Pratap's niece. Investigators actually uncovered that she was planning to secretly elope. She desperately needed an escape from the family's control, and Pratap might have been the one standing in her way. And finally, if we step outside the family, we find the contractor. He and Pratap had recently gotten into a furious, heated business dispute.
3. That is at least 3 distinct prime suspects driven by 3 classic, powerful motives: money, desperate escape, and professional vengeance. I mean, talk about a complicated job for the investigators. You've got a suspect motivated by preserving a legacy, one motivated by a desperate desire for freedom, and one motivated by pure professional retaliation. Any one of these 3 individuals had the motive and potentially the opportunity to ensure Pratap never saw another sunrise.
But here is the really frustrating part. As the investigators sift through the wreckage, they realize that practically everyone in Pratap's orbit was harboring some secret that could have led to this mindless tragedy. The physical evidence is completely charred, and the circumstantial evidence, well, it's pointing in way too many directions at once. It's essentially a classic locked room mystery, except, the room has been burned completely to the ground. So investigators are forced to rely not just on forensics, but on psychology.
Which brings us to our final section, Part 4, the psychology, ignoring the signs. Here, the source material offers a really profound look at the psychological warning signs that precede disasters like this.
The crucial takeaway here is that crimes almost never just happen in a vacuum. There are always behavioral signals, always, that we fail to act upon. The source narrative places a heavy emphasis on this whole concept of instincts. That gut feeling when a conversation goes just a little too quiet, or when a family member's gaze shifts into this cold, unfamiliar stare. Those are the micro signals telling us that our baseline of normalcy has fractured. But tragically, it's just human nature to rationalize those signals away until it's far, far too late.
The narrative explicitly warns us to be watchful of these exact red flags, and they usually follow a pretty specific pattern. It starts with those unresolved callings of the heart, where raw emotion completely overrides logical thought. Then it escalates into weird physical manifestations, persistent, unnerving stares, or those inappropriate, quirky smiles right in the middle of a serious, tense discussion. And then, the physical violence begins. The source literally describes arguments where vessels come flying across the room and glasses shatter against the wall. But the biggest red flag of the whole shebang? The family's collective failure to realize that this isn't just normal family drama anymore. These escalating rifts are the literal building blocks of a violent crime.
And that brings us to this incredibly haunting observation from the source, which I think just perfectly summarizes the tragedy. The cracks are there, too wide to be missed. The signs of impending disaster were heavily, heavily woven into the fabric of Pratap's daily life, but everyone just chose to look away. They weren't invisible. They manifested in every shattered glass, every screaming match over the will, and every whispered secret about eloping. When the heart totally takes over the mind, the outcome is so often a mindless tragedy. The signals were absolutely screaming at everyone in that house, but unfortunately, the denial was louder.
So I'm leaving you with that chilling thought today. Take a look at the evidence we've structured here and ask yourself, who really lit the match? Was it the fiercely protective wife, the desperate niece, the vengeful contractor, or actually, was it the collective failure of an entire family to address the cracks in their foundation before the whole structure came crashing down? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep analyzing the facts, keep trusting those instincts, and we'll see you next time.